Welcome to the All Booked podcast, where librarians Ashley, Justin, Brittin, and Rosa talk about what they're reading and adding to each other's TBR list.
Here we go. Welcome back, folks, to the All Book Club. We are your Richmond Public Library librarians, and we are back for a new season, Season 5, Episode 1. This podcast is meant to drop on October 2nd, and we are kicking it off with Brittin.
Yay! I got the snare drum. Nice. I got the drum roll. Okay,
It wasn't even a drum roll. It's a snare drum.
Snare drum. Sorry.
It's still rolling.
It's rolling. We're rolling. All right. Looking for Smoke, K.A. Cobell. This is an amazing book, which I've just discovered. Justin recommended it to me, and Justin read it because Rosa recommended it to her, and Ashley's mad that no one recommended it to her.
But Reese Witherspoon did.
Yeah, Reese Witherspoon has just named it for her YA, I believe, October book club. So we're very timely with this one. Looking for Smoke by K.A. Cobell. It's their debut. It is set on the Blackfeet Reservation in Montana, I believe.
Yeah.
It's Indian Days, a festival fair sort of occurrence, and there is a giveaway ceremony, which is a way to honor someone who has passed recently. You give possessions that were important to them to people who are important to you or to the person who's passed, I guess. Samantha, who is the best friend of the girl whose grandfather has just passed, whose giveaway ceremony it is, turns up dead.
At the festival.
At the festival. Samantha's friend Lauren, whose grandfather it is, and two other friends plus one outsider are all suspects because they were the last people to see her alive as well as the people to find her. So we have Mara. She's the outsider. She's a new girl. She's half Blackfeet, half white, and she doesn't really know why, but everybody seems to hate her. And
She's so nice.
keep her, at arm's length. Eli, who has been a close friend in the group, but for some reason lately he's much more standoffish, and he's always got his little sister in tow. There's Brody, also known as Little Bro. He's a jokester. He's got a major crush on Lauren. Lauren is grieving her friend Samantha's death, her grandfather's death, and we find out very quickly her sister has been missing and is, I think, certainly the law enforcement believes she either just ran away or she's gone. They've kind of given up.
Yeah.
So that is a major theme of the book, the missing and murdered Indigenous women tragedy, if you will. Their epidemic is the word I was looking for. And actually, I believe it's in the book, the quote, if you want to get away with murder, do it on an Indian reservation.
Yeah.
And it's really actually, I think, in more and more literature lately, which is it's an important topic that's really kind of been ignored. So I think it's a good thing that we're seeing it in more literature and more pop culture. So all of our protagonists, Mara, Eli, Lil Bro, and Lauren, their points of view are represented in this, as well as an unknown person who gets some chapters here and there that kind of keeps you guessing. All of them have reasons why they might have some things to hide. All of them, I felt, were really well-developed, complex characters.
Oh, absolutely.
There were things that I really liked about all of them, and for some of them, some things I really didn't like either. I thought they were very realistic. Nobody was, overly perfect.
Right. They all had their secrets.
They all had their secrets and their kind of issues.
Some of them are predictable. Others are just like, oh, okay, that makes sense now.
Yeah. So some of the themes beyond the missing and murdered Indigenous women, we have grief, obviously, suspicion, law enforcement, both tribal and non-tribal, and some of the ineffectiveness that these people feel are coming from both sides, not just the non-tribal, but some of the tribe members who are on the police force, they're really feeling let down by as well.
Right.
there's addiction issues, in particular parents with addiction issues, and then the loss of that adult figure in your life and what it causes. I mean, little bro's big brother basically, I think, came home from college, was it?
Yeah.
He moved back because their dad passed away. Lauren and her sister, who is missing, they're living with their grandmother because their mother is kind of MIA, but
the grandmother was a great character.
oh, she was.
Just every time she was in the picture, or just you're just like rooting for her.
Yeah.
The whole time.
Yeah, totally. I would say it's more of a mystery than a thriller.
Yeah, absolutely.
But
It's definitely a page turner.
yeah, and I read a lot of YA mysteries, and I'm not going to say that it completely surprised me, but there were some wrinkles in there that I did not see coming.
I agree with that. There's a bit of a repetition going on. Like, I just was like, there were moments where I was reading it and I was like, oh, didn't we just say this like 2 chapters ago? But
Right.
other than that,
Could it have been from separate characters?
Yes and no, but it was just kind of like, oh, I haven't seen this person in this long, and like,
Right.
oh yeah, this person hasn't been around, like,
Yes.
kind of deal.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, I liked it.
So I thought it was really good. I enjoyed learning more about Blackfeet culture. I've seen it compared to Firekeeper's Daughter and Warrior Girl on Earth. I feel like those had a little bit more to elevate them, maybe. But this one is definitely well worth a read. Very, very enjoyable.
Yep. Awesome. Thanks,
Did
Britt.
that have the author's note too?
This one, yes, the
Yeah.
author's note, which was excellent too. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that one was like the one that hit me the most.
Mm-hmm.
The author's note, like the author's own experiences, and like they
Oh,
were talking
yeah.
about how
Oh,
like
yeah.
they didn't feel like they were Blackfeet enough to write this, and I was just like, wow.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the author is half,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
Like Mara. Mara?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mara.
But yeah, and it's an awesome cover.
It is a very
It
cool
is.
cover.
We'll get to later.
Yeah, we'll get to that.
We'll get to that. Okay, I'm turning it over. I don't know who's going next.
I am. So, I'm going to discuss 4 books in one sitting. We are talking about the Ember and the Ashes series. By Sabaa Tahir. Can I just say, this woman, the first book I ever read of hers was All My Rage, which is by far, hands down, worth a read once in your life. It's just fantastic. But I have had this book on my TBR list for forever, and I decided one spring morning this is going to be my summer read, and it was.
It's not a summer read.
It's not.
Justin.
It
Did
took
no one
me,
tell you that?
It took me all summer, but it was a
It's
lot.
not a beach read.
It's not a beach read. Definitely not a beach read. So let me tell you about this amazing book. I'm not going to give too much away because, again, I'm trying to combine 4 books into one sitting. So it starts off, we are in a world that's kind of inspired by Rome, like very Romanesque. It's ruled by the Martial Empire. You have 2 perspectives. One is Laia. She is a scholar, and all scholars in this world are kind of poor. They're illiterate. They're basically the slaves of the world. Her brother is arrested one night. And this happens all in like the first chapter, okay, by the way. And like, disclaimer, I'm not giving anything away. You learn this the first chapter. Her family gets just killed. Basically, she ends up being a slave, and she gets in cahoots with the resistance that's fighting the Martial Empire, and they are demanding that she infiltrate the Black Cliff Military Academy in order to spy on the commandant, who is the most evil person I have ever met in a book. And this is the mother of our second perspective, who is Elias, who is just like, oh, I love everything about this man. He is the son of the commandant, and he is basically like the best soldier in the military, or in their martial empire. But he doesn't want to be part of this world. He was actually trying to escape the first chapter that you get introduced. So you end up finding that these 2 are just entwined this entire series. You find out, you read more about them, you get an insight into their character. And what's so beautiful about this book, it is a doorstopper, but it does not feel like a doorstopper. Every page you want to just keep turning. You need to know what happens next. I was literally like on the edge of my seat, like biting my nails because I just had all the feels. Like, so much happened. Like this book emotionally wrecked me because there were just so many characters, and she made me feel for all of them. And some of them met with very tragic ends, and it's just like, and they were all sudden, and they were all unexpected, and you're just like, why am I reading this? Why am I doing this to myself? But I need to know what happens. So as the books progress, so the second one is A Torch Against the Night. You get a third perspective, which is Helene, who is Elias's best friend, but she becomes the Bloodstrike. So she becomes what the Commandant used to be. She's in charge of Blackcliff. The third book, you get a fourth perspective, which is the Nightbringer, which is this being.
That's a great name.
Oh,
The
Nightbringer. It's so ominous, and this character was just fantastic. You get his perspective, and you find out that there are like all these magical creatures that used to be around all the time, and you get their perspective and what happened to them. And then you get the fourth book, which, again, was satisfying because it finished the story for me. Yet there were so many things that happened in this last book that I was not okay with because it just.
She came in pretty upset.
I was upset because again it broke me. There were just. Ugh.
I could gauge Justin's mood every single day this summer based on where she was in this series.
I took my coworkers through this trip.
It is a very good
but
book.
I'm telling you, it is worth the investment because, again, I have never read a series, 4-part series. They were long and felt like very satisfied with the way they ended. It picked up right where the other left off. It didn't feel slow to me at all. There were, maybe a few chapters here and there that just kind of like, we didn't really need this. But you know what? Overall, I just felt like the characters were so well-rounded. Like, oh my gosh, it does get a little spicy. So, this is meant for like older teens and, adults who enjoy young adult fiction. But again, I highly, highly recommend anything this woman writes. It's just hands down. This is by far one of my favorite series, and I will always recommend it. So
Nice.
After you, Ashley.
All right. So speaking of books that are not necessarily for young kids, this one is not necessarily for young kids. This is actually an adult book written that I think has YA appeal. So it's God of the Woods by Liz Moore. This is my first time reading anything by her, and I just put in a request for her other book that was published in 2020 because I loved God of the Woods so much. So this is, to my knowledge, a standalone novel, and it is a doorstop. It is over 500 pages.
But it does not
But
feel
it does
like
not
it
feel
at
like
all.
500 pages at all. And I was talking to Britt about this because to wrap your head around this and write down notes is nearly impossible. It's a very complex story to explain. But when you're reading it, you fall right into place. It all makes sense. Nothing's confusing. Everything is spelled out for you. So complex story, but easy to follow. So it is part literary thriller. It's a character study, and it talks a lot about the corruption of power, whether it be from money, position, community, whatever it is, how corruption can basically dissolve everything. Or not how power can dissolve everything. So you have not one missing kid, you have 2 missing kids. So this story starts in 1975 at a summer camp in upstate New York. Barbara Van Laar, who is the daughter of the owners of the camp, is missing. So it had to be Barbara who goes missing. So all of the camp counselors are like, of all the kids, it has to be her. So they're concerned, obviously, because it's going to look bad on them that the owner's kid went missing. Turns out that years before, their other kid also went missing. So why does this keep happening to the Van Laar family? You can dip into how crazy this family is. So they are a very wealthy bunch. think I almost got like a Great Gatsby vibe from
Yes.
them. Like they have this,
Okay.
they have this mansion that sits up the hill from the camp, and they have lavish parties where people just sleep till noon because they've been partying all night.
Don't mind if I do.
Well, like weekend-long parties.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
and a lot of them are like higher positions, but a lot of them are just actors or models or whatever. It's very much just for the look of it, I think. So you have that, and then Barbara does not fit into this mold at all. She's kind of like a punk rocker, is the way she's described. Like she has like dyed hair and she wears black, and she, like she's just not fitting in with that crowd at all. Her brother Bear is the boy who went missing years before. What happened was he went for a hike with his grandfather, and the grandfather turned around, and when he looked back, he was gone.
Oh my God! What?
So they did kind of a search. They did a
Which
search.
is, yeah.
So
yeah.
you're already kind of like, what? Okay.
Did you even try?
Right. So there's kind of a search that's in place, but it is like, I looked, didn't find him. So it's very like kind of shoved aside, and a lot of people are kind of questioning, like, if it was your kid, like,
Would you give up that
would you
easy?
give up that easily? So
Right.
there's some suspicion placed on the family in the first place. The blame is placed on this guy named Carl, poor guy, just because he was easy. So it was an easy way to place the blame on him. His family has been trying to clear his name since. He ended up passing away, which means couldn't have been the one to take Barbara.
Oh, wow.
So
Right.
now they're like, okay, so now Bear went missing, and now we have Barbara who's missing. So then you have, based on all that, you're trying to figure out what happened to Barbara, and you get a lot of different perspectives. So the main story takes place in 1975, but you can go back several years to figure out the relationship of Barbara's mother with Barbara's father. So you get that way back story. You get the story of when Bear went missing. You get the police perspective from trying to figure out Barbara's missing. So you have different timelines, different character perspectives, and all of this, again, in conversation, sounds like this is too much to handle.
But it's not.
But it's not, because it's so well written. She does such a good job, and it is very much. And while we're at it, there is a serial killer who is on the loose
From the area.
From the area.
Yeah.
So his family was the original owners of the land, and
The serial killer.
His name is Jacob Sluter. As the camp,
Great name.
Yes, the campers all call him the Slitter because he's a serial
He's like
killer.
the ghost.
Yeah,
the
he's a ghost story.
story.
He's like an urban legend. So of course, when Barbara goes missing, and at the same time this guy escapes from jail, they're like, well, obviously it's got to be him. Like, she's got to be dead.
Duh.
So, man, does this story go in so many different directions, and it really is a good, like, who did it? Like,
Right.
it's a fantastic mystery.
There are a lot of misdirections. There's a lot of people who you're like, oh, okay, well, that's weird. Like,
Right.
you have the reason.
Yes. So
motive.
It's it talks about like small town hierarchies. It talks about how money can corrupt. It talks about drug abuse. It talks about escapism. Just so many different things that come to surface with this. And then it's tragic. There are some really heartbreaking revelations in this story, but also some like nice, good on you, like really good, like all right kinds of storylines too. It seems complex. It seems like it might be too much to take on, but I highly recommend it. I took
Kind
out
of
her
sounds
other
like
book.
that Maureen Johnson series.
It's a lot more complex than the
Yeah.
Maureen Johnson, and the camp is a big part of it. The family's estate, which is in the Adirondacks, right?
I think so. Yeah.
And I mean, that's another part of it too, is nature is a big sort of part of the book, part of
Right.
the story. And, these mountains can kill you. So let's learn how to survive here.
Wow.
Right.
That's pretty cool.
And that's
Yeah.
a lot of, because there's a lot of it is learning how to survive in the woods, because they do, like, with the different cabins, they will do, like, survival exercises where they have to, they have a counselor with them, but they don't
They
talk
didn't
to
used
them.
to have a counselor with them.
didn't-
They used to just be sent out somewhere, and
Yeah.
you got to find a way to survive. You have like a loaf of bread.
Yeah.
Okay.
Go for it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Wow.
their main thing is to, if you get lost, just sit down and yell.
Yes.
That's it. Just yell. So they talk a lot about that. And then I said to Brittin, I wish that somebody just said, "Hey, are you okay?" And I could say, "Yup." and have that be the end of it. And you'll get that reference if you read the book. But it's truly, I loved it so much. I thought it was a fantastic.
Yeah.
Definitely
I've recommended
a page
it to a
turner.
lot of people.
Yeah.
Cool.
And good luck trying to get it, because
Yeah.
I think there's over 100 copies and all of them are out right now.
We were
But-
counting down. Hey, I'm down to 176 on the wait list.
Yeah, so it's a hot ticket item, but
Yeah.
I wound up just buying it for my Kindle. But it was really good. I really
Worth
loved it.
it.
It was worth
I
it.
have
It was.
tried to read. I listen to most of the books that I read. It's audiobooks. And this one I found difficult because there are so many jumping around. And in the beginning, you're like, wait, who's Judita? Like where?
Yes.
So in a book, you can flip back.
Right.
Right.
So I managed to steal Ashley's copy that she got from outside of Buckles to
Yeah.
borrow for a little
Nice.
bit and get myself.
Yeah.
But I've recommended it to a bunch of people.
And what's nice about Liz Moore is because she's writing from so many different POVs, you can tell the tone is different from each character. So if you don't remember who Judita is, you figure it out within a couple of seconds
Right,
because of
right.
the tone shifts completely. And then you have Alice, and your heart breaks a little bit, and then like everybody has a different vibe when you're reading them. So,
I love when authors can actually do that.
no, it's very good.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
Rose's turn.
Okay. So I was actually going to talk about The 13th Child by Aaron Craig. That's coming out next week on Tuesday, but I can't really formulate some thoughts about it yet, just because
You need to simmer, it seems like.
yeah.
Gonna have to put that one aside.
Yeah, but that's a good spooky season read. It's a loose retelling of this really obscure Grimm's Brother fairy tale called Godfather Death.
Oh, yeah.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Okay.
I still haven't gotten over the goose girl from last time.
Yeah, but since this is coming out in October, I thought I should talk about a book by a Filipino-American author, Gabriella Buba's Saints of Storm and Sorrow. So this one is actually an adult fantasy, but I think it has a good crossover appeal to an upper YA reader. So this one is basically very, very much rooted in Filipino history and mythology. So you're in this world that's sort of inspired by the early conquest of the Philippines by the Castilians, the Spanish. And so you have this city called Aynila, which is a throwback to the roots of the word Manila. And the Codicians, who are the Castilians, have basically set up base in Aynila and have subjugated its indigenous peoples. There are still pockets of indigenous autonomy because it's an archipelago and it's hard to take over an entire archipelago.
That's Britt's favorite word.
Sorry.
Throwback to one of our other podcasts. Sorry, continue, Rosa.
Amazing.
So this
Watch
one,
it.
so this centers on the daughter of a chieftainess who is half Codician, but she was raised by her chieftainess mother, and it turns out that she is a storm caller who is somebody who is connected to the goddess of storms, and whenever she lets down her hair, a storm happens.
Nice.
So she has to keep her
That girl
hair
some
up.
hair ties.
Yeah, she has to have a special sort of mother of pearl comb from the sea she harvested to keep up her hair, so she doesn't cause storms and deaths and flooding.
Got it.
But she can't control her power. She's literally 7 years old.
It's not her fault.
So her mom sends her to go live in a convent.
Oh my God.
Poor Stormbringer.
And along the way, along the way on the boat to the convent that her father runs, her Cadician father, she accidentally creates a storm. And one of the younger kids on board, who is around her age, Alon, gets like tossed overboard. So she has to save him. And when she does save him, they become friends, and they basically have this like bond because his father is actually the chieftain of Ainila, so he lives near the convent, and they grow up kind of together, and he falls in love with her. But while in the convent, Lunurin, the main character, falls in love with her fellow nun. Catalina.
Trouble in the convent.
Yeah.
But Catalina, who is also half Codician, looks more Codician than indigenous, like Lunurin does. So there's this like tension between them that even though they're in love, and even though they have to keep their like relationship under the radar, or the nuns will like beat them.
Naturally.
Catalina doesn't like the fact that Lunurin is so connected to her indigenous side, and that she has this connection to like a pagan goddess, whereas Catalina basically turns to their version of Christianity to sort of like find a purpose, because she's like in this in-between state where like she doesn't know what to do. She's not Codician enough for the Codicians, but like she's not indigenous enough for like the Ainilans. So religion is basically her crutch, but it comes to like a head when Catalina basically in a fight breaks Lunurin's like magical like pendant. And this is when the goddess that Lunurin is connected to is like, okay, now that you've like freed me from that pendant, I can possess you now.
Oh, good.
And
All right.
All we were missing from this book was a bit of possession.
yeah. So basically, the goddess Anitun Tabu wants to wipe out the city and drive out the Codicians, but at the risk of like killing also like the
her
indigenous
people. Yeah.
So we get this struggle between Lunurin and the goddess, which is like, why are you fighting against the goddess? But
Yeah.
anyway,
That's a
never
losing
bodes
battle.
well.
Yeah.
yeah.
No.
So with the reluctant help of Catalina and Alon, her best friend, who she has to marry out of convenience.
Oh my goodness.
This is so much.
She has to find a way to negotiate with the goddess while also driving out the Codicians, who are basically like ruining everybody's
She's still
lives.
7.
No, she grows up in the
I think we kind of assume time passed.
Well, I mean, yeah, but at the same time, you know.
Yeah. That would be so funny.
Brad Bride's heaven.
That's true.
Quite a story.
Yeah.
I was more worried about, that's a lot to put on a little kid.
Yeah.
Her whole description. You were like, how old is she?
Oh my God.
It does tell a different
Rosa.
story.
Sorry.
No, I think that's funny.
All right. So I guess we can switch gears now and talk about our topic. So, moment of truth, librarians. Do you judge a book by its cover? And if so, what was your experience reading this particular book? Negative, positive? Who wants to go first?
All right, I brought
I was
samples.
going to say, you did bring examples.
I do judge a book by its cover as much as I try not to. Most of the time, if I know enough about the book to know that I can ignore the cover, I just complain about what an unfortunate cover it is. But, okay, so this is why you shouldn't, including myself. This is the red flag, the warning. There are books that have a cover.
And for
such
folks who are
as
listening
this one.
in, this is this winter.
This Winter by Alex Oseman. It is a red cover with a small light bulb that's kind of a snow globe. Very small, very plain cover. This was the British edition, I believe. Yes, this is the UK edition. After Alice Oseman's Heartstopper came out and became so popular,
Yeah.
the book, which is a Heartstopper novella, it's not a graphic novel, it's a novella, but with the Heartstopper characters. The book was repackaged in Heartstopper graphic novel format. So now we've got this beautiful, full illustration, lovely colors, the faces, the people we know, the characters we connect to. It's the same story.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
I mean, it's the same story. So despite the fact that I'll look at a book and go, ooh, I want to read that, or ooh, I don't know about that, we got to not do that.
I know. It's
Yeah.
tough.
And, this is similar to whenever they put out the movie cover edition.
Oh, I never buy it.
Well,
Ooh, it's
but
such a pet peeve.
sometimes it's an improvement. There are
I know, that's
times.
true.
I mean, I'll use the Jenny Han, To All the Boys I've Loved Before.
Yes.
I really liked the first cover. I thought those were great. But I really loved them too when they put out the one after the movies came out. I
Right.
thought those were
Yeah.
also very appealing.
Yeah. Yeah.
So.
But what's funny is I feel like a Heartstopper fan would be drawn to the one that has the graphic novel design.
Yes.
Of course.
As a reader, I'd be drawn to the red one.
Really?
Yes.
Wow.
I like the minimalist approach because I
Minimalist is a good word. For
I
it.
feel like it leaves me to fill in the gaps.
Right.
Not the cover of the book.
Good way of
Well,
putting
that's another reason why you shouldn't judge a book by its cover is we all have different tastes.
Yes.
Yeah. Yep.
I mean, we all work with Kaylee, who's an artist and who is very invested in book covers. And there are times when she will complain about a cover, and I'll think to myself, I didn't think it was that. I know she knows. I mean, she's got the training and the talent. But there are times when I'm like, yeah, that was okay.
Well, and trends come and go because
of course.
you can, I mean, how many, there was a time, I don't know what exactly the years were, but you couldn't walk into the YA room without the exact same face on the cover with like
right.
some.
Or the girl
Well,
with
yeah.
the back of the girl
With
in
the- or like
in
the
a
ball
dress.
gown,
Yes.
Yes,
from
yeah.
the side.
Exactly.
And then we
exactly.
went through after like the adult romance book started with the cutesy
Right now that's
cartoonish
YA
almost
stuff,
cover.
yeah.
Now that's all in the YA.
Yep.
There were photos.
Yeah.
We went through a period probably when you guys were too young to read YA where every book was a photograph of a model. It wasn't drawn.
Yeah. But another example, not to harp on Alice Oseman, so one of her original covers for Radio Silence was garbage. Like it was bad. It was like radio silence over somebody's face, and it was like shiny. It was just so bad, and it had nothing to do with the story.
Right.
So then she did the same thing. It was more like the Heartstopper kind of design, but it was two characters sitting with all podcast equipment around them, and like it was just like a teenager's bedroom.
Right.
And that was so much more on the nose of getting to know the characters that it was way more inviting into the story versus the other one. So it's hard to say. One of the best books that I read last year was Darkroom Etiquette, and I never would have picked it up because the cover was awful. It's just a hand-drawn kid, like
With
looking
with
up
a
at a
light
light.
bulb.
Yeah, and I was like, man, it looks boring.
Yeah.
And then I read that in like one sitting because it was so good, and it was a long book, but it was phenomenal. And I was like, man, that cover does not do that book justice. It happens all the time.
Yeah.
It does. And there's also something to be said that before books got to be diverse, most characters that were diverse were not really shown on the covers, or they were partially shown, or half of their face was hidden, or just something was like a bit off. So I guess like as a librarian, my eyes are more attuned to like seeing like weird discrepancies and seeing things that are just like, why did we go this way, publisher? Like,
Right.
why? But I guess like, yeah, I do tend to have judgment when I first see a book, but I don't think it deters me either way, whether or not I'm going to pick it up or not. I mean, I don't read past 25 pages if it doesn't capture me. Like that's my only rule. Like I
Right.
will pick up a book and read it, but if I don't want to keep reading after 25 pages, I'm not going to finish you.
Have you ever handed a book to a patron? Like you're going to recommend a book and been like, don't look at the cover.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
I feel like you know exactly what kind of book you're getting into when the author's name takes up 80% of the cover.
Yeah.
Like,
Right.
you know, like, oh, this is one of those books. And that's not always the case. Like, you know, it is true, but in the same breath, you can say a really awesome cover can hold a really terrible story. Lest we forget Tempest of Tea. I'm sorry, I'm going to name it now.
awful.
It was not a good book. I'm sorry to the author. Not that she's listening to this, but like to people who were fans, it wasn't a good book. But the cover was cool. It's a cool cover. One of the reasons why I picked it up.
Right. I think the only thing I would ever say is if you're going to do a series, 3 parts, 4 parts, they gotta all look the same.
Yeah,
they gotta have to all agree, all the font. Like you can't change it up halfway. Like you can't do that.
true.
Yeah.
You can't do it to us.
I just saw a post about that.
Yeah.
Somebody going through like
Yeah.
yeah.
Like
And
who
showing
approved
you the
this?
spine, saying what?
Who
what
approved
happened
this?
here?
You know, it's got to be a weird person that likes their bookshelf to look a certain way, like it needs to be appealing. Like when they did me wrong with The Winter's Curse, like my bookshelf looks weird. So yeah, but anyways, any other thoughts or well, cool.
Don't judge a book by its cover.
Don't do it, folks.
Even though we all kind of do it, don't do it.
Try your best not to.
I don't know. And I mean, it kind of helps like with genre expectations, I guess.
It does.
Yeah.
It does.
Yeah,
Although they can pull that over on you too.
that's true.
You know. So yeah, I mean, I've in my previous career in publishing, I've sat in and said, could we make it look a little bit more like Harry Potter? You know, and it wasn't that the book was Harry Potter. We just were. Every book we were selling, we were saying it's Harry Potter, but it's set in blah, blah, or it's Harry Potter, but with animals.
Yeah.
It's funny that you bring up Harry Potter because how many different editions are there?
there's
There's
so
a
many
million
different covers.
editions.
So many.
And I feel like there's only some that feel like the book. And obviously the original one, I feel that's a true representation of the story. Brian Selznick came close.
So good.
Because
There's like 8 different versions.
there
though,
are
right?
So beautiful.
there are a lot of different editions, different versions. But
I'm a big fan of the ones that we have in the illustrated fiction. Like those are beautiful.
those are beautiful.
So beautiful.
Those
They're
are
hard to read though.
They are
so
hard. They're
big.
heavy too. They're very heavy, but they're beautifully illustrated. But I'm trying to think. There's one. I don't know who the illustrator is, but it's very cartoonish. It doesn't feel like Harry Potter to me, because when you're like, maybe it's even the color scheme, because this one skews a little bit more towards like blues and stuff like that, whereas the originals are more reds and like Gryffindor colors, you know. So you associate that with, you know, I don't know. It's funny how I feel like the cover of the book should in some way match the tone or the feel of the story it holds.
So you're making me think of another kids' classic book, if you will, Holes.
Oh,
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah. So
okay.
we needed more copies of Holes. And the record in the catalog that it was closest to was the one that's like the face where it looks like he's wearing a pot. And
Yes.
it's totally
Yeah.
terrible. And I'm like, okay, we can go with the original, where it's like 2 colors and there's a hole.
Just a
or
hole.
we can go
Yeah.
with the movie cover, or we can go where you're from inside. But this one is terrible.
I know exactly which one you're
I
talking about.
told Bergman, I was like, we either need to send it in to get a new record, or we have to mislink it, because nobody's going to say, yes, this is the book I want.
Right, and it's such a good book.
Right.
But man, I know
That
but
one
they
cover,
have a new
sorry.
the newer one. It's like dug out holes.
Yes.
That's a cool cover.
Yes.
Like that one works, and it
Yes.
kind of tells enough of the story that you're like, I'm interested. The
Right.
other one is like,
That's a takeoff of the one that's the movie
Yes.
cover
Yes.
that's
Yes.
from
Yes.
inside the hole.
right.
Yeah.
No, the one you're talking, it looks like tangram pieces.
Yeah.
Like, it's
Yeah.
It's bad. It's bad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know if we helped or
Was that the point?
or
I'm sorry.
deterred
Were we
you,
supposed
but
to be helping?
Give you more to
no,
think
no,
about.
no. But again, as librarians who see books every single day of our lives, we do judge. It's not a bad thing.
It's human.
It's
is.
it's something we just do. We do recommend that you give a book a try, regardless of the cover.
Or title. Sometimes titles can screw you up,
yes.
too. I'm reading. I
Ridiculous.
just started. I know. I'm sorry. I know you want to.
No, it's all right.
I just started Kelly Bishop's The Third Gilmore Girl. It's
Oh,
so good. I
yeah.
love her. Just
I love how she, the daughter.
I know. So she had she was doing publicity for her new book that just came out. It's called The Third Gilmore Girl, and it's a memoir. It's her career.
Yeah.
But Lauren Graham, who plays her daughter in Gilmore Girls, facilitated the entire conversation. So she was the moderator for her
so
book talk, which
nice.
was very nice. But anyway, she was the opening for the book. The foreword is written by Amy Sherman Palladino, who wrote Gilmore Girls, and among many other things. But she was saying how Warner Brothers were just hounding her that no one will watch a show called The Gilmore Girls. They will not watch it. Will not watch it. And she was fighting for it. Like, I don't understand. Why would they not watch this? So what they decided on was to drop the and just make it Gilmore Girls. And then that was what sealed the deal. So even a title can turn some people off.
Wow.
That's so crazy.
It's wild. But it's
is
very
wild.
true that sometimes even a title, you'll be like, oh.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah, that's what I don't get. Like when studios adapt like book series, they use the title of the first book as the title of the TV show.
Series. Yeah,
Right.
the series. Yep.
Yeah.
Game of Thrones, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, because that's a Song of
That's
Ice and
difficult
Fire.
when you're looking it up on the catalog too.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oof.
Crazy. What sells and what doesn't.
Right.
That's a whole other
That's
podcast.
another.
That's a whole
day.
other episode.
Sorry.
Well, thank you, ladies, for giving us your thoughts, giving us your books, and thank you, folks, for watching and tuning in. We'll catch you next month. Thanks.
Excellent.
Bye.
The All Booked podcast is written, directed, and hosted by Justin, Rosa, Ashley, and Brittin, and produced and edited by Olivia Esteban. All Booked is produced by the Ridgewood Public Library. Please consider subscribing and sharing with friends, and follow us on Facebook. You can find links to the books we talked about today in the description. Thanks for listening, and keep reading.